I've had a bunch of people call me up lately or message me looking for help on how to do the cross-border flying procedures from Canada to US, US to Canada. I do this quite often for personal and work travel, and it really isn't as bad as it kind of seems when you first look at all the custom stuff. So today, Aaron and I are gonna go for a flight from Pitt Meadows to Boeing Field in Seattle and back, and then we're gonna go through all the steps, everything you need to do, and a whole bunch of just kind of tips and tricks in my way that I like to set everything up for this. And hopefully this helps some people out and yeah, go flying.
Whip pan.
I hope I have my GoPro audio cable. So it's custom detail, choosing port of entry, EAPIS, flight plan, landing rights, documents, fly the leg. This flight is going to be from Pitt Meadows to Boeing Field. So we're going Canada to US. We're going to be filing IFR for this. I'll point out a couple of the VFR, IFR differences for cross-border, but there really isn't too much there. And then just keep in mind, this is all within the context of two dual citizens going down, and we're Canadian based going down to the US and then coming back. For the Canada to the US side, the order of items that we need to get sorted out are the DTOPS customs decal. We need to choose a port of entry. We need to file the EAPIS. We need a flight plan. We need to confirm landing rights. We need to make sure that we got all our documents. And then finally, we need to fly that flight. First up, before considering flying down to the US, make sure to go and get your customs decals. So this is from the DTOPS site. I'll put the link in the video here, put it in the description below. That you need to register your airplane for private aviation. It's a little sticker that goes on the side of the plane. And usually those for me have come within about 2 weeks, but just make sure to give a few weeks if you haven't gotten one yet before you actually plan a trip down there. Once you have the customs decal and you put it on the plane, which should be at the main entry or exit of the plane, once you have that, the next thing to do when you're planning a trip down is to choose a port of entry. What I like to do for choosing ports of entry that have customs available is I'll find the airports closest to where I want to go on ForeFlight. And ForeFlight does a really good job of showing if there is customs available, if there's prior permission required, and that's a really nice starting point for me. Once you've kind of chosen if there is customs available or some options, what I like to do is I'll go to the CBP website and I'll actually check a little bit more on that information of that airport. Is customs 24/7 for general aviation? Do you need prior permission required? Are there certain times that customs available and open till? Does customs need to be called out from a different airport? There's a bunch of different little factors in there, but it is good to go through, and I'll look at ForeFlight, I'll look at the CBP website and kind of get an idea of any little quirks of the port of entries for there. Example we'll look at is Bellingham, Boeing Field, Friday Harbor, and Hillsborough. Bellingham is 24-hour general aviation, private aviation, customs clearance. That one's super easy and straightforward. Boeing Field is certain hours, so I believe it's 8 to 6, don't quote me on that, but you gotta make sure that you're arriving within that window, and they have a slightly different process for landing rights confirmation as well. Friday Harbor, they do have customs available there, but because they also are clearing and doing customs for ferries and boats out of the actual harbor, you need to coordinate with them to make sure that your arrival time is not overlapping when a ferry is coming in, for instance. And then lastly, Hillsborough, which is in Oregon next to Portland. Portland International Customs services Hillsborough, but because of that, you need to again arrange for prior approval of a certain window, and they actually, I think it's last time I checked with them, is a $70 call-out fee to actually get cleared in Hillsborough. So the best thing to do is just do your research, and there's lots of info there. And if you're unsure about anything, call the office, like the customs office, and ask them. If you're unsure of what times you can arrive at or whatever, a certain process, just call. They'll help you out. It's pretty straightforward. The EAPIS system is completely US based, so everything is within the context of whether we're arriving or departing the US. So when we're flying Canada to the US, we're gonna file a notice of arrival because we're arriving in the States. When you open this up, you'll go through, put in all the information. It's pretty straightforward. The only real gotchas in there or things that I've seen people have questions on is when it asks for the time and location of crossing the border. For me, I like to put in just a really recognizable location and approximate time of where that'll be. So for us today, going from Pitt Meadows down south, I like to put in that we're gonna cross the White Rock Beacon at approximately 5 minutes after our departure time. The other things are, if you're doing like a short day trip and you're just parking at an FBO for the day and just roaming around town, when it comes to putting the address of or location that you'll be staying at in the US, I just put the address of the FBO. The plane will be there even if you're roaming around, and that has seemed to be fine so far. When you're filling out the EAPIS, make sure on each of the crew or the passenger profiles that you make sure to save to manifest on it. Otherwise it won't have it in the system. And then as you go through, don't be worried about going and hitting, next step. There's a bunch of reviews of the whole filing before you actually fully submit it. So you'll get to review the kind of the passenger manifest on it, and then you also review the entire EAPIS submission at the end before it actually goes out. Once you're done all that, file that off, you'll get an EAPIS confirmation number, and you should get an email within 5 to 10 minutes as well that just confirms everything on there. The next thing that we need to do is confirm landing rights. Just because you file an EAPIS does not necessarily mean you have permission to land at that port of entry. That needs to get confirmed separately. Now, there's two ways of doing this that I've run into. One, which is the most common, is calling the actual customs office. I like to call the customs office pretty much, within an hour or so of filing the EAPIS, even if I file the EAPIS the day before, and just to make sure they received it. And then for Bellingham, for instance, they'll request that you call an hour before departure to confirm everything, and then also give you the landing rights confirmation as well then. Boeing Field is a little bit different. They switched to email last year. I'll put the email below for them, but they actually require that you email them, and then they send you an email confirming landing rights. Once you've done that, the next thing we're gonna look at is the flight plan and filing it. So you do need to have a flight plan, whether it's VFR or IFR to cross the border. Today we're gonna go IFR, pretty straightforward. But VFR, the only difference there, besides filing your VFR flight plan, is when you get to your destination, you'll just have to close it with flight service. So at that point, going through the checklist, we've got customs decal, EAPIS filed, landing rights confirmation, we have filed the flight plan, and at this point, we are pretty much ready to go. Not quite. So I totally forgot while recording this to get into the document section, but really quickly, the documents that you need to have and make sure that you've got prepared are your passport, your medical, your pilot's license, and your C of R. The last thing that I'll do before heading down is, in part of my briefing when we go down and clearing customs at whatever airport, I'll make that part of the actual briefing to figure out where we're going when we land, because we got to find the customs office. We should be familiar. Is it on the north side, south side, west side? And just to kind of get familiar again with where you expect to go. These airports are going to more often be busier airports, so it's super nice to kind of get ahead of things. And for us today, we'll look at the chart for Boeing Field. We know that customs is off on Alpha on the northeast side. So for us, with the winds today, we're going to expect to come in on 1-4 right on the ILS. We'll probably get off at Alpha 7 or Alpha 9, Alpha, north to customs. It's a lot of stuff to do, like the day before, or before you go on the flight. But once it's all done, if you just have that organized checklist and go through it all, it's really not bad. All right, I'm going to check the weather again, and then we'll fire up and go.
We're now ready to copy.
Ready to copy, Mike Echo.
Okay, Fox Mike Echo, clear to the Boeing Field Airport. Spec viz departure flight plan route. Maintain 3000, squawk 7057, and departure 1323 when advised.
Mike Echo, clear to the Boeing Field Airport. Spec viz departure flight plan route. Maintain 3000, 7057, and 323 when advised.
Mike Echo, roger. Ready to go. Ready to taxi.
Affirm, and I'd like to do the run-up on the Alpha runway.
Mike Echo, roger. Taxi via Alpha and hold short of 26 left for now. Advise ground when you're ready to go.
Hold short 26 left, Mike Echo, and we'll let you know on ground. Alright, winds right down the runway. Alright, takeoff power set, airspeed's alive.
Surveillance service terminated.
Got positive rate, gears coming up. Alright, so we're pretty close to Seattle now. We've been cleared to the ILS 14 right to Boeing Field. We're about 12 miles out from the initial approach fix. And yeah, so really once we land, we're gonna go to that customs box that we already found on our plate when we were briefing the flight. And once we get there, we'll just give them a call, let them know that we're outside, and we'll get all our documents ready and we should be good to go.
That was hard.
Charlie Foxtrot, Mike, Alpha Echo Boeing ground taxi, customs via Alpha.
What? Customs via Alpha, Charlie Foxtrot, Mike Echo.